their empathy for people, their desire to help people, and needless to say, their commitments. I mean, when I joined the city of Warwick, I sort of got at the end of Joe Walsh's term, but I heard legendary stories about him before he was married. He'd live at City Hall, literally. He'd had a shower in the office, and he would never leave. He was there all the time. By the time I get there, I think he was married and had children. His behavior had moderated. Both of them had that quality of willing to listen to people, show empathy, try to help them, and just made a big impact on me. I knew nothing about city government or state government when I got involved there. They showed the reason why people become public servants, and that ultimately is trying to help people.
Hello, and welcome to the Resilient Leader's Journey, a podcast where we discuss leadership through character, confidence, and commitment. Today's guest is Jim Hagerty, formerly the finance director for the city of Warwick. After that, he went into his banking career, starting at Bank Boston Hospital Trust, moving on to Citizens Bank, ultimately ending up at Washington Trust. Jim, thank you for being our guest. We appreciate having you today. And let me ask you a question. What is harder for you, lending me money or being a guest on this podcast?
Trent, since at one point I think I did lend you money through your employer, so since I've already done that's easier, I would say.
How did you choose to focus so much of your time into these wonderful Rhode Island-based nonprofits?
So, my first stint in a sort of a career path was to leave the CPA firm I was with and go to the city of Warwick. And at the time, I was 24 years old. And I was exposed to two great leaders. Joe Walsh was the mayor who hired me. And then ultimately, Frank Flaherty. And both went on to have very successful careers. Joe was an attorney, a well-known lobbyist up at the State House, and then Frank Flaherty is a Supreme Court justice. And both of them expressed the importance of public service, helping others, and that made a significant impression on me. And so when I eventually left Warwick City Hall, I went to Rhode Island Hospital Trust, Bank Boston, and that was one of their core values. They really expected others, their employees, to become involved in the community and in leadership. And it followed after that with Citizens Bank and also with Washington Trust. And so I took the lead of the mentors I had. You give, but you receive much more. It also helped me in a leadership role in chairing several boards, working with the executive directors, working with the board, and I just loved it. It was a win-win for, I hope, the organization, and certainly for me. I learned a great deal during my time when I committed to those organizations.
Were the organizations more thankful to have your accounting skills, your banking skills, or general leadership? What are those type of boards looking for?
They really struggle to find people willing to commit the time and energy to leadership. So I don't think it was, I didn't go in there in all cases because of accounting or banking. Certainly they're aware of my career in those areas, but I think they were looking for someone to lead those organizations. So oftentimes as a, stepping stone to becoming the chair, I would, serve as a committee chair, say finance or governance, something along those lines. And when the board would deliberate about succession planning on the board, my name would come up, and I was, very happy to be nominated and given those opportunities to lead. So there's no question, not-for-profit boards, even 25 years ago and even today, they struggle to find leadership for their organizations.
I find very similar. It's it's time that they need the most. It's commitment they need. They can backfill around the different skill sets to get there.
Yeah.
I find the same way. With Mayors Walsh and Flaherty, what unique qualities did they have that impressed you so much at a young age?
Their empathy for people, their desire to help people, and needless to say, their commitments. I mean, when I joined the city of Warwick, I sort of got at the end of Joe Walsh's term, but I had heard legendary stories about him when before he was married, that he'd live at City Hall literally. He'd had a shower in the office and he would never leave. He was there all the time. By the time I get there, I think he was married and had children, so his behavior had moderated. But both of them had that quality of willing to listen to people, show empathy, try to help them, and it just made a big impact on me. I knew nothing about city government or state government when I got involved there. They showed the reason why people become public servants, and that ultimately is trying to help people.
It is empathy is a very underrated emotional intelligence quality that gets displayed, and this would have been somewhere north of 40 years ago, and it probably is even less relevant then. Had you ever heard of those terms back 40 years ago?
I don't think, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think back then, sort of management science and leadership, the study of leadership was not sort of in the forefront.
Sure.
So I certainly early in my career did not hear those terms or see those necessarily as um, qualities of a leader. I think when I got in there, I think, they're the decision makers, but, ultimately I got to understand how and why they made decisions, and empathy was a big part of that in, how they governed.
Sure. Sure. It's interesting when you say when you get to your banking roles that the bank's culture or the bank's leadership encouraged you and others to take on public service as part of your responsibilities. And was just a general part of their culture? Was that evolving or was that already there when you got there?
I think it was there in all cases. It was ingrained. People that were the sort of the leadership of the banks were also leaders in the community. And so, if you're looking to advance your career, you knew that the expectation was that you'd be a leader in your community. And there are just so many opportunities that fit whatever your personal interest is in Rhode Island in that sector. And um, you know, you can take advantage of it. But yes, it was already ingrained there, and I think I saw it maybe elevated even more at Citizens. I think Larry Fish made that, one of his hallmarks. They had the Good Citizenship Award. They, Channel 10 community leaders, and they've always made a significant commitment, to the community.
Sure. Wonderful. Do you have these medals, these Good Citizen Award medals that you wear?
No, I don't have those. I think we got certificates, Trent,
Oh,
but
okay. Well, I'm sure you put that on your refrigerator each time you got one.
yeah. My report card.
That's exactly right. Right. You got to prove to you got to prove at home that you're doing something of value. Right.
That's right.
So Peter Drucker once said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Is that part of the way Larry Fish would have thought about it?
That's an interesting question. I don't think so. I still think strategy was paramount, but in formulating that strategy, uh, community was an important aspect of that input.
Mhm.
Um, so I would say no. Peter Drucker, he knows a lot more than I do, but I think that absolutely strategy still was paramount. He had, ultimately you got to determine who you're answering to, and in that case, it was the Royal Bank of Scotland. They expected certain results, and I'm not sure they cared too much about, the culture of the company, but Larry tried to blend it in there and make it, part of our strategic advantage.
I understand that. I see many of good CEOs that attempt to do that. And it always seems to me the ones that have the culture that people can rally around, it fosters lower turnover, higher productivity, and the like. And I think that happened quite a bit at Citizens Bank, even though RBS was the owner at the time. You were
Yeah,
there.
I agree.
So, in your role as commercial banker, you have to get out, you have to get in front of people, you have to meet people. What level of self confidence is required to go and do that?
Um, I think it's after initially when you're a young banker and you're learning sort of the ropes, there is a period where, it's not that natural. And I think, how you get there to develop that self confidence is self reflection, um, determining what you want to say, what you want to communicate, and also having a mentor that can give you valuable advice. So I think after a while, Trent, it does get to be, it's just part of your job and part of your, how you do your job. You don't think too much about it. And so I think self confidence may be something that's developed over time. It's not, it's like anything else. And until you have experience in certain things, you're going to be taking steps forward, a little bit of self-reflection. You may take a step back here and there, but eventually you get to a level where you feel very comfortable doing those sorts of things.
That's really interesting. It might be one of the first times I've heard that self confidence is a learned trait. It's not something that comes from within necessarily, but something that gets developed through experience and reflection.
Yeah, and what I guess an example for me would be when I went to the city of Warwick. Here I was a 24-year-old, recent graduate, and within the first few days I was there, they had like a lot of companies have the old bookkeeper who've been there for, 40 years. And she came into the office and said to me, um, I've been doing this job longer than you are old.
Oh, she gave you that line.
Oh yeah, she gave me the let me know where I stood, and so eventually, what I did was I needed to get my feet on the ground and get comfortable with my role and what I needed to do. And I would say early on in my career there, because of I was a very inexperienced. Maybe I wasn't a big risk taker. I would maybe not be that innovative. It was sort of taking incremental steps towards improvement. But eventually, over time, as I, you know, had more experience in that role, I grew in self confidence and was, more willing to make change and take risk than I was certainly at the beginning.
Sure, sure. Most bankers I know are not self proclaimed risk takers.
Yeah. Well,
We,
I think there is maybe not in making loans, I would say, but I think within improving the organization and having it go forward. For example, I could give you. We had a very much a say a antiquated commercial loan approval process and system. We really didn't have a system. We were relying on Excel spreadsheets and Word, and so there was a strong need to develop more consistency in the way things were underwritten and done. We need to get electronic credit files. And that was something when I went to Washington Trust, I, made that one of the top priorities. And so when we did that, I made, I think personally I made a mistake in that I did not um, do a good job up front in getting buy-in from the team. It was a little bit, in retrospect, I should have done a better job in getting informal discussions about what the need was and why, and explaining things. And we kind of went into a system that was less risky. It was kind of had a good installed base. I also had a constraint, which was cost, and I had to fit the system into the budget dollars that I had. But I didn't do a good job explaining that to people. So when we wound up making the decision, we got a system that was better than what we were doing, but it didn't realize the potential of what we could do, and that the implementation of that took a long time as a result. So I had to have a little bit of humility and say, I hear you. I hear what you see as shortcomings here, and this is a 5-year contract, and we will, take a look at this again when we get to that point. In the meantime, we learned some valuable lessons in how to structure workflow and that sort of thing, so that when we went out to the new RFP, we were able to get a system that was much more flexible, was based upon Word and Excel, but it was within a system, so we could get the consistency that we were looking for. And it wound up being a success because we did a better job explaining up front, but also soliciting opinions of people on really what do you really want to see for a system. So everyone had their input. They understood why we were making the decision. Even those that wanted maybe another system bought into this and understood the rationale why. And it turned out to be, in hindsight, a very successful implementation. But I had to eat some humble pie on the first one, and it taught me some valuable lessons that I needed to do a better job selling up front.
Humble pie can always be taste a little better with some barbecue sauce on it. But yes, you worked during one of the most unique periods of our generation, the Great Recession, and so the second quarter of 2008, Lehman Brothers go down, Bear Stearns goes down. And what was the general sentiment that you felt in the banking industry at that time, and how did it affect your confidence about business?
Well, that was a very dark time, and especially at Citizens, we were owned by the Royal Bank of Scotland, and the Royal Bank was caught up in that as well, and eventually became basically part of the UK. They had control, and they had severe capital issues, and we had some great credit names that had been longtime customers of the bank. We also had new customers that had capital needs that were very strong companies, and it affected our confidence in getting deals done. I mean, these deals will be done by every other bank in town. I want to say they were risk free, but they were low on the risk scale compared to the rest of the portfolio. But because of the capital issues, it, it was difficult to determine what could get approved and what could not get approved. And it affected our relationships with some of our customers. Eventually, we got through it, but it was a very, very difficult time. 2008, 2009. It took a long time to recover.
So, how did it affect you personally as in a job? You've watching an economy that bankers are an engine for start to grind to a halt. How does that affect you personally as a leader when you see those events?
Well, the big thing was all my members of my team. They were very nervous. They were again concerned about what they could deliver on behalf of their customers. And the only thing I could really do, Trent, was to communicate what I saw, which is changing, almost by the day, and give them assurance that we'll do the best we can and try to run as much interference as we can in order to get things done. So it was just a very challenging time because of the unknown, and but the biggest thing really was the people that are in the field just felt like they couldn't deliver the bank to their customers.
Yeah. It
And
must
that affected me because, I needed, you worry that people will get so discouraged they go to another bank that had maybe a stronger profile, and that did happen in an occasion or two, um, but I think overall we came out of it relatively, um, I won't say unscathed, but intact, and we were able to climb back out of that.
this happens in other businesses as well, that a business may be having a softer spot than others, and particularly in a tight labor market where it's, barriers to entry or jumping ship are so small. In industries I've been in, whether it be electricians or field technicians, 50 cents can make the difference in
Yeah,
a
yeah.
transition. And so, as a leader, what is that primary message that you would tell people about why the values of your company and the values of your leadership are worth riding that storm out?
Yeah, that's a good question. I We were very fortunate, because we weren't paying the top dollar to our lenders. I mean, our value proposition was really about balance and culture, um, and that was upset by the financial crisis. So ultimately, Trent, we you just need to communicate as often as you can. Um, and assure them that there'll be the sun's going to rise tomorrow, and we'll have another. Things will get better, and people put a lot of trust in you. They like the organization, they like being there, but they need that reassurance that we're going to make it. And I'm not. I firmly believe that. I think I had some conviction in what I had to say, and people put trust in me that they could rely on what I had to say.
Jim, when I play this back, I think I'm going to hear Annie singing that the sun will come out tomorrow.
Yeah, you're right.
My last question today, Jim, who is your favorite fictional character?
Well, I was thinking about, with basketball, March Madness, and the recent death of Gene Hackman. One of my favorite movies of all time was Hoosiers,
Mm,
and he is the coach. There were many episodes in that movie where he showed leadership, and just a couple of them. One was getting I don't know what his last name was, but Jimmy, the shooter, the best player in the
yeah.
team, to get onto the court and join the team, and that turned the season around. And ultimately, somewhere along the way during the season, the school administration didn't like what he was doing, and they were going to fire him. And the team came, and this Jimmy that was, everyone knew he was the star. He said, "If coach goes, I go," and the team stood behind him. And then, finally it was the last play that won the championship, where the coach was going to have um, a decoy for this Jimmy, and they said, no, 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 Jimmy's got to take the shot. And the coach said, okay. And so that was the ultimate trust the coach can have in his team and in a player. So, I mean, that is just, I always loved that movie. It was just a great, great movie.
It is a sensational movie. And I agree. There are so many, and I love when Gene Hackman measured. It's 10 feet high to the rim and 15 feet to the free throw line, and it's the same distance as our gym. Everything's the same.
Yeah.
And Jimmy, you sure didn't sit there and watch the paint dry. In this interview, you were magnificent. Thank you very much for joining us, Jim Hagerty, today. Folks, resilient leaders face challenging currents, and it's tough navigating. But with one tack or another, we can get there together. If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell a friend, have them subscribe. Go to our YouTube page, or you can go to Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe and join. Jim Hagerty, thank you for joining us. Folks, have a pleasant day.